Transparent gaming on the Bitcoin SV blockchain. Transparency and immutability are key tenets of any blockchain tech. Let's dig in. Chloe Tartan, nChain.
Hi, thank you. Sorry for the delay. So I'll be talking to you about some work we've been doing with my colleague Jack Davies at nChain on transparent gaming on the BSV blockchain. And this is without compromising profitability for businesses. So just some background on the work we do at nChain. We're really motivated by using the blockchain in new and disruptive ways to target particular problems across a number of industries. We look at the fundamental cryptographic principles that are used that are underlying the BSV blockchain. And using these, we develop novel use cases beyond the realms of crypto. And why do we do this? Well, building applications on the BSV blockchain enables security for businesses, meets the transparency requirements of customers through the immutable nature of this public ledger, and it ensures high efficiency in data processes, which of course leads to profitability, amongst some other of those benefits. So of course, it's a gaming industry conference. So looking at the landscape of this industry, of course, it was the generation of online gaming came along with the birth of the internet. So the first of its kind was in 1994, rising in popularity towards the early 2000s. I think in the UK alone, the industry generates around £5 billion in annual revenues. So despite this popularity, there have actually been major problems in the perceived fairness of online play. Obviously, the previous speaker talked a bit about this in terms of the provably fair concept. In 2013, there was a survey of 10,000 online gamers wanting, 92% of them wanting some kind of third-party reputable audit to ensure that there was a fairness of play. And so the next generation of gaming really paved the way to this. I've earmarked it with the birth of Bitcoin because this is when sort of the users could feel that the power was back in their hands through this distributed network, essentially removing trust entirely from the picture. So my sort of definition of next generation iGaming is really this provably fair online era. And this is where sort of provably fair means the mechanisms used to generate the results of a game can be vetted by the user independently for authenticity and randomness. And prior to blockchain solutions, we had people simply trusting online casinos that they weren't sort of altering the results based on the player's bet. Whereas now, not having to rely on a website's bold claims of third-party verified, we can actually prove for ourselves that the outcome of the game is true and fair, using tools that are unaffiliated with that site. So I'll talk you now through sort of what's going on under the hood, trying to be as not too technical as possible. So provably fair randomness, really, if we think of a scenario where we've got a player, an online gaming server, which is controlling some kind of random number generator. This is your source of randomness for, say, a game of chance. So the first and foremost, most important thing is that this server will commit to their source of randomness and input the seed of that randomness to the random number generator. Next, the player will contribute their randomness. And this will be combined with the server seed to be able to generate the random number, which will then dictate how the game plays out. And so after the game is done, of course, we want to be able to verify that the outcome was indeed fair. So this will involve the server revealing the seed to allow the player to calculate this. So provably fair obviously has been done in some form or another, but provably fair multiplayer games still remains a challenge, and this is due to the computational complexity involved. So this could be players against players, for example, in a game of poker, or we could also think of this as multiple players sort of each playing against the house, say with multiple slot machines. But we'll focus on this sort of concept of poker and thinking about how we can use the blockchain as a solution when we have multiple players involved. So here I'll sort of revisit this definition of provably fair. Now we have multiple players, a dealer representing the house, a random number generator, and introducing the blockchain. Again, as before, the dealer will commit to their source of randomness. The players now independently each commit to their source of randomness, and all of this is being stored on the blockchain. But now, for the sake of time and cost efficiency, really, if the entire process itself, including the random number generation and game, were to happen on the blockchain, we would be able to save a lot of time and money, essentially. So let's understand how we might be able to map a game and replicate the logic of this game on the actual blockchain. So, as I said, we'll look at poker. We'll start with mapping a deck of cards to a poker game. And on the blockchain, we might be able to represent these using 52 unique digital keys. Now we can take that random number that we generated with all the players and shuffle through on the blockchain using the native Bitcoin language in a provably fair way. To understand how you'd replicate the game logic, we'd need to know a bit more about how these keys actually work. So I've tried to draw up this analogy. The most important thing you need to know is that there are two components, a private key and a public key. And we can think of this as a public key being a padlock, and only the owner of a private key can open this padlock. So by extension of this analogy, that's just a bit of maths to show you that I'm smart, but yeah. So by extension of this analogy, we can say that we've got, in a round of poker, I've got two face-down cards. Now, to the outsider, they don't know any information about these cards, and so therefore, these look like two locked padlocks, and I only know the private keys to them. And so in contrast to some face-up cards on the poker table, are visible to all, and so are their corresponding private keys. So these are essentially unlocked padlocks. Now, if I want to commit to a poker hand, I can do this using the neat mathematical properties of these keys without revealing my private information. So I can essentially create a sort of mega padlock, which can only be unlocked with knowledge of the 5 private keys that we used to create it. And so going forwards, we can then use these properties, these digital keys properties, to bet rounds on the blockchain. I can input my funds into the pot, and I can commit these with the key and sign it off with that key, committing to that hand without revealing any information about my hand. And so we could do this for each round in the game, or we might simply want to just publish important states of the game, say the initial state where I was dealt some cards, and the final state being the showdown, the result of the game. So I've just retaken poker as an example, but as I said, we could do this for any game that requires provably fair randomness, which most of them do. So, for example, players versus the house, we could imagine a scenario where we have slot machines, individuals playing slot machines, and they're all linked to, securely linked to a single jackpot. Or we could have players around a roulette wheel, all betting on different outcomes or groupings of outcomes, again, using these neat mathematical properties, tying our bets to our commitments to a public key, essentially, and many other options. So I'd just like to end by sort of talking about what we see as these benefits to the house. Of course, provably fair brings benefits to the user, but what does this mean for the house? Well, first and foremost, the randomness of the game cannot be called into disrepute by players, so your reputation wouldn't be at risk. We enable instant secure payments that are only redeemable by the winner due to this sort of fundamental cryptography that's tying them to their funds. The blockchain technology is interoperable. This means that it's easily integrated with existing gaming platforms. It works under the hood. We can utilize lightweight servers or even automated smart contracts that generate the random number for the users, and this makes them resilient to failure, essentially, because of the security of the blockchain. And really, the blockchain itself, or Bitcoin, is a way to couple money, but of sort of monetary value, with data transfer. And this is incredibly powerful, especially when you're thinking about an industry such as the gaming industry that's heavily regulated and requires third-party audits. This information is transparent, it's all contained within the transactions, and would save a lot of cost and time for these companies. And lastly, of course, my focus was on multiplayer games, so I can script these games in advance and put them in blockchain transactions, and these can just be played over and over again. at saving a lot of computational processing. So I'd just like to summarize by saying that obviously we see these being some of the requirements of the house and have mapped these to some of the Bitcoin SV features that can be provided when used as an online gaming platform. And I hope I've convinced you in seeing that this is the next generation of iGaming. Thank you, and please do come talk to us at our stand.